welcome to another broadcast of Uganda Youth Collective. Hi, it's been a long time. I hope everybody is doing fine. We just want to welcome every single one of you. This is Winnie Kitaka for Uganda Youth Collective. It's been a while, so how is everybody been? I hope you're fine. We come back to you today on something that is a pressing issue currently here in the UK. If you're somebody that keeps up with current affairs internationally or in the UK, if you happen to be in the UK, one of the current issues at the moment is that the UK is about to go into a referendum on Europe, whether the UK stays as part of the European Union or comes out of the European Union. And here at Uganda Youth Collective, or Ugandans in the diaspora, we wanted to remake this broadcast because we want to find out, or we wanted to look into, how does this decision, whether the UK remains or exits Europe, how does this decision impact Ugandans? And so this, in the next few minutes, I have Richard Kiyimba with me today, and he's going to help go deeper into most of this. I'm going to do it by give an introduction to this, and stay tuned and listen attentively, because we're going to use probably a few words that some people you're not familiar with, but I guarantee you stay with us, because this is so important to you as Ugandans, not just for you, but if you're a parent, it's important for your children, because the decision to remain or leave, we believe, will greatly impact Ugandans in a way. So here's an introduction. With only weeks to the referendum in the European Union, Ugandans and other ethnic minorities, regardless of the outcome, must reflect on the changing political discourse emerging in Britain today. For many Ugandans, Britain is now home. Our children were born and educated here. However, this referendum represents a shift on issues that we as a community have to seriously pay attention to, especially the young who think because they are British, they're at liberty to ignore what's happening in the country. Our parents' generation, most of them now reaching retirement, will probably never be affected with whatever decision is made on the 23rd June, which is this month. But for people under 40 years old, the weight of change is more likely to impact our future. And this is why this broadcast is important. Now listen to this. Right now, net immigration to Britain stands at, wait for it, 333,000 a year. This is roughly, if you live in the UK, this is roughly the population of Nottingham coming to settle here every year. Now, at this point, I'm going to pause and bring Richard into the conversation. And I want to ask Richard, what does that mean? You know, if we're having that many immigrants coming to the UK, I mean, we might argue and say we were immigrants too, but what does it mean that if every year we have an additional 333 immigrants coming into the UK? Richard, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Please, Richard, enlighten us. What does that mean? Why should we care?
Well, the most obvious answer is that if you're having that number of people coming into the country every year, it means that the things that we used to take for granted, such as access to the NHS, being able to go to see your doctors when you want to see them at any given time, it means that that's going to change, because obviously the number of people that are coming in. It means also that as an ethnic minority, there are challenges, because once these people begin to come in at this kind of scale, there's a challenge, and hopefully we're going to explore that later on more in this discussion. But we also become a minority ourselves, and we kind of need to really begin to take off and ask ourselves, if we're getting this size of people are coming in regularly, how would that affect our lives as Ugandans in this country if we're all going for the same type of jobs that these immigrants are going for? Now, obviously, I'm not saying that all Ugandans are low-skilled and they don't have the qualifications. But generally speaking, that these people are coming in for the same work that we would have gone for. So the competition is now there. Talking about us all being immigrants, yes, that's true. First of all, let me just say that I'm not against immigrants because we are all immigrants. That's not what this is about. But this is really about to ask ourselves as a people, as a group, as a society, that can we continually see ourselves in the same position today in Britain, a country that looks more outward looking, or are we going to see ourselves as a people who have been here for such a long time, and we have to begin to make changes that are going to impact the lives of our kids and grandkids to come? Because if you have 335,000 people coming in every year, that means that for all these people that are coming in, they want the jobs that your children are hopefully trying to get when they finish college or when they finish university. So what we're trying to do is begin to open up this dialogue and say, okay, as Ugandans, can we say that we prepared our kids for what's happening? Have we prepared ourselves mentally? Have we done enough for us to be in a position whereby the changes that are happening in this country are not going to, in a negative way, have an impact on us? And so what we're trying to do is begin the discussion and begin the dialogue.
Okay, and I guess I also think, when you're talking about this number of people coming to the UK, you may remember in our parents' generation, and I remember some of you may recall, people would say things like, when you go to the UK, you can pick TVs on the street, you can find other things, you get a house, you get you get work. But what is happening, what this means, with this many immigrants coming into the UK, that if, for example, if I say there was a pot of money or a pot of gold, as some believe or think, that pot of gold, instead of that being shared amongst the few that have been, now has to be distributed. That's if they will continue to do that. If Europe doesn't decide against that,
absolutely,
that has to continue to be distributed, not just among us, the few that have been, but among us, all this influx of people that will come into the UK. Now, as Ugandans, where does that leave us as Ugandans? Because in times past, and maybe this will be for a different podcast, is sometimes our people, and not all of us, sometimes we're just lazy. They don't want to go out there and work, and they just want to get the, how do I put it in the way that every single one of you listeners will understand? You just want the office job. You want to put the suit on, but the reality is, even for young people that have graduated, they're still looking for work.
Absolutely.
To the point that when you go to the job centers, for those of you who are listening outside of the UK, job centers, these are places that you could go to try, where work is advertised, that I think are facilitated by the government to help you to find work. But even, I remember there was a time when you go to the job centers, there was so much work. But now, even for a cleaning job, there are people with degrees competing for even cleaning jobs or jobs in retail. There's so many people competing for the same thing. Now, for us as Ugandans, and for our children, and for our youth who are here, this decision to stay or remain is important that you take part. Because whether you understand it, whether you know it or not, it will impact in one form or another in your daily living, but also in that of your children. And I want to read this as well. And Richard, I want to bring you back in at this point. Not much at first glance, but whenever new immigrants come to a country, they are determined to achieve and work hard. That's what we did. You get here, most of you came, I have a vision, I'm going to go to the UK for a number of years, I'm going to work hard, save money, go back home and build. They come to work hard. And what's happened with those of us or our parents who have been here for longer, we have become complacent and relaxed. Almost like we have reached the promised land.
Absolutely.
But the new ones that are coming in, they're working harder and are willing to take less money for the job that you think you have a monopoly to. They're willing to work for less money. For example, in the building trade, these Eastern Europeans, and they work damn hard. So these are the kind of things we're talking about. This is where, as a Ugandan, you need to wake up and start to look at this. In the restaurant, first and foremost, the color of their skin is going to surpass you whether you like it or not. So these are the things that we need to talk about. So as a community, we might lose out or even be left behind if we seriously ignore and underestimate the current neoliberal narrative of the rich and poor. Now, I'm going to bring Richard in because I just said a big word. What does neoliberal mean, Richard?
Well, it's first of all, it's important for us to have a background understanding of where we are in this country. Britain used to be a socialist country. When Margaret Thatcher came into this country, when she became Prime Minister in the 1970s, she completely transformed this country from a manufacturing nation to one that now began to look more towards the service economy. After, obviously, Margaret Thatcher, Major came in, and after Major, it was Tony Blair that came in. Now, the reason why we speak of neoliberalism is because from the time Margaret Thatcher came in right up to today, we basically live in a global neoliberal country whereby everything is a commodity. Everything's about money. Everything's about how much you can make. Everybody is a commodity. So the reason why this is important for us to bear in mind is because we are moving ever closer to a point whereby the government of this country is going to completely phase out the things that for a long time we thought that we can rely on, such as the NHS, which is becoming privatized as we speak. Our police force is becoming more like an American type of police force, whereby everything is based on points.
Richard, I'm going to stop you there for a minute because I want to make sure these people understand. Because when you say, let's not underestimate the current neoliberal narrative of the rich and poor. In other words, you're saying almost like this concept, this idea, or this system of neoliberalism. In other words, for example, give me an example. Like, for example, maybe a street. Maybe you could say this street belongs.
So you want me to
break it down?
Okay.
So that everybody can understand it, because it's important that you get this.
In a nutshell, liberalism is basically a concept that breaks things down into. So socialism was about a group, a collective of people working towards a collective goal. Liberalism, on the other hand, is about the individual.
Right.
It's about the individual autonomy. It's about goals. It's about determination. It's about the person being at liberty to pursue whatever he or she wants.
Right.
Now, that concept is now being used today in the country in an economic sense. So with neoliberalism, it's that concept, but in the modern age.
Right.
So now, our governments are basically neoliberal in a sense that it's no longer right or left, it's center right, center left.
Right.
So they've moved into the middle ground whereby the economy, for example, it has to be open to the private sector as well as the public sector. So what neoliberalism does, it says that from now on in, everything is open to privatization.
Right.
Everything is open to